Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GlobalLogic Cafe, LinkedIn Live Conversations. Our conversations via the LinkedIn Live Cafe are all around technology, careers, leadership, and diversity. Our host for today's chat is Rohitash Singh, Senior Vice President and Head of Global Solutioning at GlobalLogic. Let's welcome Rohitash with a huge round of applause.
Hi, thanks for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to introduce our guest for the day, Michael Neidow. Michael is Executive Vice President and he heads the Tool Services Business Unit at Hilti. I will let Michael speak a little bit more about himself and what's exciting in his life and also introduce Hilti as a company. And then we can dive into some interesting discussions today. Michael?
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today to talk to you a bit about technology and how that technology helps industrial companies. But before we get there, maybe a few words about myself. Michael Neidow is my name. I'm actually by training a mechanical engineer, focused there during the studies a lot on simulation around fluid dynamics and thermodynamics. Somehow that software thing is now coming back to me in my current role. We'll come to that in a second. After my studies, I worked for a couple of years at McKinsey & Company as a consultant and then joined in 2009 Hilti, where I'm still today. And today I am the head of the business unit Tool Services and Software, where we are responsible to augment our hardware products, our power tools, with service and software value proposition to make it overall more attractive for our customers. Now, I think it would be worthwhile that we might spend a minute on explaining who Hilti is and what we do. Maybe some of you have heard the name, some of you might even have been in touch with our products and used them. So Hilti is a supplier to the construction industry. We have about 6 billion in sales, and we mainly provide fastening products and power tools for the construction industry. That's how we grew up, and that's also what we are famous for. One topic that is specific to Hilti in the construction industry is that we are a direct selling company. We don't sell through dealer and partners, we sell directly to the customer. And with that, we have one big advantage that we really hear directly from the customers what's on their mind and what pain points they have. And with that, we started already quite a while ago, more than 20 years ago, to really innovate around services. And today, actually, a big part of our power tool business, for example, is not a classical transactional business where customers buy tools anymore from us. It's actually more a hardware as a service model where customers pay a monthly fee to us, and we make sure that everything works and we manage not only their tool, but really their tool park and everything around it. We make sure that tools get replaced, that repair is for free, but also that the customers have the right tool park composition. Yeah? So that is bit what we are and what we do at Hilti.
Thanks so much, Michael, for introducing yourself and your company. The topic that we have for discussion today is a very interesting topic around, how traditional meets new, especially in the industrial space where the general perception is that the companies are a little bit more traditional. It takes longer for technology to sort of permeate and drive innovation, etc. But all the market conditions today are pointing to the fact that the industrial space in general, the acceleration of technology and innovation is just going to happen there for a variety of reasons, right? So my first question to you would be around what you think in general about technology's impact in the past and today in this industrial space.
I think, first of all, technology is super exciting, and if it's used right, it has a lot of positive impact on the industrial space. Yeah? I think what is important that it works is that we bring two things together. You need to have on the whatever industrial sector you look at, you need to have a real need to change something where technology is an enabler to drive the change, but that actually has to be also combined with the supply side that there's somebody who actually provides the technology in a way that it actually really supports the benefit that is needed by the industrial sector. There's many examples in the past where something like that worked, and many actually where it failed. Maybe even a very prominent one out of the consumer side is that when you look at the cell phone, there was for a long time a need to actually make the cell phone more than a phone. There were from Nokia with the Nokia communicator with Blackberries and things around. But the only one that really got it right first was Apple with the new iPhone, and now we really have everybody is basically using iPhones. So you need to have this match of a need for something new combined actually with a perfect offering. It can be a product, but I think it also is in the construction space, especially often a software product, but actually combined with a service offering to help driving the implementation of the software at the customers.
That's a good insight, Michael. Can you give us some examples of what those needs might be? Like what are the, I'm slightly jumping ahead here, but you mentioned a very interesting point. What are those needs that will potentially drive this change?
Yeah, if you look at now the construction industry more specifically, which is the one that I'm most familiar with due to our business at Hilti, we see that the construction industry is going through a big change currently, and there's a lot of topics that can be solved with technology. I mean, just to mention a few at the highest level, I think we see that the construction industry has fallen clearly short of delivering productivity in compared to many other industries. So everything that really helps customers to become more productive is a big need. Then when we look into health and safety and sustainability, look, construction is the biggest industry in the world. It's the biggest actually CO2 emission industry in the world. So everything that is technology that is helping to reduce carbon dioxide will be a big need in the construction industry. So when we look at worker health and safety, construction industry has about 10 times the accidents than manufacturing would have per worker. So everything around really bringing more safety to the construction side, that's another big need we have in the construction space. And we have a big topic around aging workforce, that hits obviously all sectors, but construction, which is to a large extent still manual work, and where it's much harder to automate with robots and so on than maybe in the classical manufacturing, this factor of aging workforce will hit actually construction stronger than other industries or than many other industries. So there's a long list, and then I just mentioned now a few that create really pain points and really big struggles in the eyes of our customers, where they seek help. And help is usually a partner, but also in many of these cases requires a technology solution to reduce the amount of workers that are needed to make companies more productive, to reduce incidents and all these kind of things. Right?
Yeah, again, so Michael, I was talking to you a little bit earlier about the Japanese environment. I was speaking to Hitachi Consulting, and they mentioned this issue about the aging workforce very specifically, right? Japan itself, just in the construction industry, is going to lose 1 million workers over the next 3 to 4 years. And as you rightly said, it's difficult to automate parts of the construction environment with robotics and so on and so forth. So what they need to do is increase the productivity of the skilled workers who are still there or who will come into that industry. And that drives a different kind of technology sort of imperative, right?
Yes. And the good thing in construction is that there's a lot of potential. So we did a study on actually on what is the time spent of the workers on the construction side. And depending a bit on the country, between 35 and 50% of the time, it's actually not value adding. It's spent on finding information. Look, there's the drawing missing, or finding material. I have a tool missing, or I have a fasting product missing. So there is just if you just look into that specific example, there's a lot of potential to improve productivity, and with that actually also compensate the effect that we actually overall lose workers and lose experienced workers in the construction industry.
Great. So while we're on the topic of the construction space, can you give us some examples of what might be holding back the adoption of technology in this space, right? What are the challenges that are unique to the construction space? What is holding back innovation, or what is holding back technology adoption?
Yeah, I think when we look at construction in comparison to maybe other industries, maybe like automotive or many also of the consumer goods industries, is that it's very fragmented, and that the value creation is done to a very large extent by what I would call medium-sized companies that have maybe 100 to 500, maybe sometimes 1,000 workers. But it's not that you have so many very big conglomerates like you would have in automotive with GM, Volkswagen, and so on. So you rather have big part of the value creation is done by medium-sized companies. Then those companies obviously struggle to build technology themselves, and also struggle even to implement existing technology. So what is needed in the construction industry is on the supply side, partners that provide software, other technological solutions with IoT, reality capture with cameras and things like that, but also provide real hands-on, on-the-ground support to the players in the industry to really make it happen, to really implement it well, that the customers really get the benefit out of the technology. And that's very specific, I think, due to simply the fragmentation and to the size of many of the players in the industry, which is rather medium-sized companies in comparison to other industries. They simply don't have the ability to invest into large own IT departments and large own change management and process organizations. That's just one example that's really holding back adoption in my mind.
Okay, but do you feel there's recognition in the industry about things needing to change? For example, like having bigger IT budgets. So are the CXOs thinking about that?
Yes,
is that
that's
changing?
definitely there. Yes, definitely. We see that with every customer we talk to, and the need for change is understood. Also the need to invest more. So on average, the construction companies maybe spend actually today below 1% of their revenue on IT. There's various studies that this needs to go up maybe to 2.5%, maybe even 3% to really unlock the productivity potential. And I think what is different than maybe 10, 15 years ago is that this need is really understood, but also the overall profitability of the industry, while it's still low, it actually has increased in the last year, so that there is also a bit more room to actually now make such investments.
Okay, and I think a lot of the points that you're talking about in the construction industry, there is commonality between them and some of the other manufacturing spaces as well, right? For example, supply chain is a universal sort of thing. In most of these industries, the supply chain itself, 1 or 2 tiers down, tends to be fragmented, right? So do you feel that some of the solutions that might come up in the construction industry around innovation and technology adoption and digital solutions, similar patterns may apply across different industries?
I think on the highest level, obviously on the levels, it's similar, that you do better planning, for example, that you do more pre-work and so on. But I think on the next level of execution detail, it actually becomes very different. And I think there was also very prominent startups that actually came out of the manufacturing space and believed, look, we now fully automate construction. And they have, I don't want to mention the name now, but they have been extremely prominent. And the biggest one just went bankrupt a year ago and said, look, we failed. It just doesn't work like that. So I think it's very important to recognize, if we want to play in that field, is that it's not a plug and play that we say, look, what worked in manufacturing will also work on construction. It's not going to be that easy. Because there is also simply a lot of things that are too different. Look, a building is simply, most of the cases, not a standard like a car where you can fully automate, and with that also enforce automation and standardization down the supply chain. That's simply different in construction. It's just one example. There's very many, and it goes to building standards. Are they global? Are they local? There's so many, even on a community level, on a state and level, different regulations that have to be followed. So there's a lot of factors that hinder the classical levels of pure standardization and automation that works in other industry for construction. Yeah.
Cool. So, what are the kinds of innovation examples or trends that you are seeing in the construction industry? And what is, what in your opinion are like the technology trends that will drive innovation or drive improvement in the construction industry?
Yeah, I think there's one big, I think it's not even one trend, I think it's more a big area of trends and innovation, which is everything around BIM, prefabrication and pre-planning. Yeah, you can say BIM is obviously a very big buzzword, but there's a lot of things happening there in the planning phase, but then also in the execution phase, and then even in the validation phase of the building, where we then talk about digital twins that then whether the building is built the right way can be monitored, and then also the digital print of the building can be then used actually also throughout the maintenance and life cycle of a building. So I think that is one big area of innovation where we see a lot of activities. Another one is more now really software that is supporting the operations on the job site. Yeah, we can call it productivity software that is really supporting how projects are managed, so this task management, how informations are shared on the job site, how people collaborate using modern technology, these kind of things. Yeah. Then we see activities around IoT. I think it's actually quite well established with heavy equipment. We drive that now a lot also on the smaller equipment side from the Hilti side. This IoT can also help with workforce management solutions. So that's, I think, another field which is of interest, is everything around Internet of Things. And very, still nascent field, but which could become interesting is for example, robotics. Yeah, there is interesting activities. It's still very small and it's still very focused on specific niche problems, but there's activity to really also use robotic and automation to make construction better. And I think an overarching last one that I want to mention is you see a lot of things happening really on the offering side. The GCs start to think of buildings more also as a product catalog where you can play a bit, I would say, Lego, and try to standardize what they actually offer and how they build. Yeah, that you build multifamily homes, build industrial buildings, that you build hotels and so on, always in a similar way, and offer then simply more just configuration options to the buyer of the building, and with that reduce flexibility, but then drive standards, and with that make execution much more predictable, and with that also bring down the costs.
Okay, great. So I wanted to, on this topic, I wanted to share an example of a company with you, Michael, and then ask you a question about that. So one of the companies that we work with at GlobalLogic is a company called Command Alcon, and we didn't know this space exists before we met this company. They provide software for managing the concrete, the concrete that goes into building construction, the life cycle of the concrete and the supply chain of the concrete. And when we started working with them, we realized how complex that whole process is. The concrete needs to be made at a certain time. It has to be a certain consistency. It has to be delivered within a certain window. All kinds of things. There's fleet management involved. But this company provides very robust software specifically targeted at that space. Do you see this as a trend that's coming up, like we saw in the past, like in the finance space? A whole bunch of fintech companies rose at one point, born in the cloud, that were trying to disrupt pieces of like the overall finance space. Do you see that happening in the construction space, where construction tech companies will evolve and address like certain pieces? Do you see that happening today, or do you anticipate that happening in the future? Is that potential for the next set of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs to go after that space?
Yes, I think there is potential there. And we also see that the investment into construction tech or prop tech, you can also call it this property tech or construction tech, that startups has substantially increased over the last years. I think it increased by a factor of 2 or 3. I don't have the exact numbers now with me. But in comparison to other startup technology sectors in other industries, actually still pretty small. Yeah. Now, those construction tech startups, they have, I think there's a lot that are really good and they have good solutions for specific problems. But from a startup investor point of view, we should also be honest that construction tech has a big challenge, and which makes it maybe less attractive than other industries, because the adoption usually takes much more time. Yeah, so if you're a classical VC investor, you have a certain time horizon of maybe 12 years, or if you're lucky 15 years at max, where your fund has to close. Yeah, so if you start investing and so on, the holding period is maybe then 7 to 10 years. Yeah. And in other industries, in 7 to 10 years, you can usually scale up much faster than in construction. And so this first milestone, even of product market fit, due to the complexity of the process, takes longer in construction than in many other industries. And then the second phase also to really scale up and to gain a lot of customers and maybe even have some network effects and so on, is happening in construction fairly slow due to the fragmentation of the industry. Yeah. So that takes longer, and I think that is the important piece to know when investing and talking about construction tech. I think there's a big need for those technology solutions. I think there are also great companies with great ideas, but everybody who wants to invest there and thinks about even doing that himself needs to have a longer breath than you might need in pharma or other industries. I don't know the other industries that well, but in comparison, what we see from statistics, it simply takes longer to get the return.
So maybe this will force some innovation in the investment models and the financial sort of construct as well, right? Because there is definitely a need, and companies who can sustain, who can fund for longer times, and can create innovative models around investment return. There'll be place for innovation in that space as well, right? There's another trend I wanted to speak to you about. Again, I was talking to you briefly yesterday. We were spending time with Hitachi Consulting and the construction industry in Japan. And one thing they shared is that the convergence, right? So Japan Railway owns a lot of property along the railway lines at the endpoints around the station and all, and they are getting into the construction business. They are creating residential and commercial complexes, but they want to have sort of a converged experience for the end consumer, whether it's a shopper or a resident in those places. And we've seen in the past where in other industries, disruption has come from outside the industry. What are your thoughts on that, on this whole convergence and the construction industry meeting other industries around it? What implications does that have on innovation that would be needed or technology adoption that would be needed?
Yeah, I think before we talk about disruption from outside the industry, let's have a brief conversation on what's the need in the industry, because I think what we have is a good match that the parties, the GCs, they actually sell a building. They want to make more money and find new revenue streams that are higher profitable than just the building itself. Yeah. Same on the buyer side. There is a need to want to really have professional lifecycle management throughout the building with this digital enhanced experience. It's a shopping center that you then directly build into the building, certain Wi-Fi spots and so on, that people that walk around know where they are and these kind of things. So there's some opportunity for business models for GCs to simply offer more to their customers in the end, and with that actually create a competitive advantage for them and also increase their own profitability. So that example with the railways, I think that is a very relevant one, that the buyers want to have also more innovations out of the building than just the building is there, and as it was maybe in the past. Now, do we see a lot of disruption from players that are not in the industry? There, seriously, I have my doubts. Yeah, if that really would happen at large scale. We are of the belief that the players in the industry have a big advantage because they understand the specificities of construction. And we believe that, especially in construction, with all its complexity and with all its specific processes and so on, it's very hard for an outsider who maybe have great technology, great ideas, and has been successful in other industries to come into construction and replicate the success. We believe this is much more of a success model around verticals, whether it's on the supply side or also on the builder side in the end. That's more our belief. Yeah? There can be exceptions, but I think in a larger number scale, we will find that the construction-specific players will be more successful. Yeah.
Cool. So we are almost coming to the end of our conversation time. And before we start taking questions from the people, but what are the biggest sort of challenges and opportunities that you see, say, in the next 3, 4, 5 years in the construction industry?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges are around really this. What I said initially is around the productivity challenge and the sustainability challenge. I think this will be the two really big things where we need to make the construction industry really better in terms of productivity, sustainability, and safety. Yeah? I think this is really the topic for the future. As I said, the construction is the biggest industry in the world, has the biggest CO2 emissions, it has a very large workforce, but it doesn't deliver on productivity. It is super high on safety incidents and is super high on CO2 emission. And with being so big and having all those issues, there is simply the intrinsic need, but I think there will also come a lot of more pressure from regulatory bodies to improve. It's both the industry itself, I think, has recognized that it wants to improve it, but there will also be more pressure from governments and all sorts of institutions on construction to really get better.
Thanks so much, Michael. So I wanted to open this up for questions from the audience, if any. And the way it works is, the questions will come onto the chat when they come, and I'll post them to you, Michael, as soon as I see them. A question from my side. This whole thing of convergence that we talked about earlier, right, with the Tokyo Rail example, and the construction companies themselves wanting more sort of business models, more profitable sort of businesses within the buildings or outside the buildings, right? There's another angle to this, which is around this whole thing evolving into like smart spaces and smart cities. There's a lot of government initiative that we see, a lot of investment sort of being poured into at least R&D at this stage, right? What do you think are the ripple down effects of all of this into the construction industry itself?
I think that's very, very early stage. I think that there will be more coming around smart cities. Also the shopping mall experience I had before, there's a smart building in the end. I think that there will be much more to come. It's I think a bit too early to really be conclusive on what it will mean on all sorts of levels. But I think the two things that I would take away in general is that the players in the construction industry have to get really better in mastering technology, and especially digital technologies, across everybody, whether it's the GC, whether it's the subcontractor, whether it's the hardware suppliers, whether it's the concrete suppliers. I think for the whole industry, there is a big need to really master the digital challenges, which I think as an industry, we haven't done well in the past. So that will come. And with that, also then build up the required capabilities and so on. I think that one is clear, that this is needed. Now, to what extent, what it really means, on what technologies, will it be IoT all the way, or will we realize IoT is maybe just in some pockets relevant and we have other things? Look, I think that remains to be seen. But what will stay is the need to really drive digitalization and really master those capabilities for all players in construction.
Okay. Another curious question sort of that I have is, right, traditionally, like, construction industry is not considered one of those glamorous industries, right? But it's still a very, very essential part of the planet, right? Everybody needs a place to live in, so on and so forth. Is there anything happening on like getting more people into the workforce? There's obviously a lot of people in the workforce. We talked about the aging problem where people will be leaving the workforce. Is there anything happening at the front end of this where people can join the workforce more, or some such thing? Or are we going to always face this problem of this workforce attrition and slowly the workforce declining?
Yeah, I think we will always face a challenge with having enough skilled labor. Yeah, I think that is a challenge that construction will always have. By the way, most industries have it, but as I said, I think in construction will always be bigger because there's simply such a high amount of work that cannot be fully standardized and automated. Yeah, so that I think will never really go away. Now there's a lot of activities to compensate it, I think, on all levels in the companies, but also in certain trade associations and so on, to get more skilled labor. Yeah, really, and I think skilled labor is two things. So one is the skilled labor on the execution side, but I think what we also see now in construction is that there's a lot of effort to bring actually people into construction that have a digitalization, automation, or lean background, these kind of things that I think that was very en vogue in manufacturing maybe 20, 25 years ago, that all companies hired such profiles. This is also now happening much more in construction, that companies hire people that can really help to automate processes, that understand technology and also understand and how to adopt and use the technology in the construction space. I think that is the second trend that we see, that there is an upskilling and also a new capability build-up happening in the construction industry.
Okay. So we have a few questions from the audience, Michael, so let me ask you the first one. The question is, what is so unique about the construction industry, and what does the future look like? And I know we covered some parts of this in our conversation, but it'd be good if you can just, like, from your standpoint, just summarize that. Like, a lot of us don't understand the construction industry.
Yeah, I love it. It's a very broad question. I could most likely talk 2 hours about it. So what's really so unique about construction? Look, I think construction is the biggest industry we have in the world, and every building is basically a unicorn. Yeah? There's maybe some hotels and so on that build similarly, but in principle, the construction industry's output is always a unique product. Yeah? It's not like in machinery and automotive and airplanes where you basically always have the same output in just some small configurations. That's first thing I think that is unique. I think it's exciting because everybody on daily basis uses the construction products. We all live in buildings, we all go to office buildings and so on, so it touches everyone. And certainly what I think also makes it unique compared to maybe not all industry, but to a lot, is the level of fragmentation, and that a lot of the value creation is actually happening by medium-sized companies. Yeah. We also have very big, obviously a few very big construction companies, especially on the general contractor side, but to a large extent, the construction industry is actually a mid-market industry. Those are maybe the few ones I would say everybody should keep in mind when talking about construction, if you compare it to some other classical industries.
Okay. There are a few questions clustered around the future of the industry and around some specific technology. So let me ask you about the future first, right? So what in the next 5 years, right? What are the biggest trends or challenges that you see, right? So making it sort of more real. In the next 5 years, what are the things that might change in the construction industry? What is coming, like, in the next 5 years?
Look, I think construction industry in general is moving slow. I think what we will see in the next 5 years is that the topics or some key trends that have already started will simply accelerate. Yeah, I don't think that we will see now so many new things really becoming big in the next 5 years. And it's a bit similar to the topics that we discussed before. It's all around BIM, pre-planning, prefabrication, with that making the construction really much more predictable and avoiding rework. I think that is one topic that will keep on growing. And what we see is that companies will invest more or continue to invest more into IT, and then also into software that really helps them to run the company. So software really supporting the field operations, but also investment into more their business management. And other industries, you could call it ERP. I think it doesn't really fit for construction that well, but there's vertical business management solutions. I think they will see a lot of adoption coming. I think that maybe let's leave it there. There's a few other things that have already started, but I would now expect that now we have a new big thing that is not anywhere. That 5 years, for example, robotics will not be very big in 5 years. Robotics is still initial topic, and maybe in the next 5 years we find as an industry a few places where it really works, but it will not be a robotic revolution happening in 5 years in construction. That's not the case.
Okay, so let me ask you a very specific question around, because the workforce productivity is sort of a big issue in the industry, right? How do you see that changing in the next 5 years? Is it going to be like very slow and incremental, or do you think that significant investment would be needed or would be made on the topic of workforce productivity?
I think there will be a lot of investments being made, but the challenge will still be there in 5 years from now. I think the construction industry will get better. Yeah, but if you look at the potential that construction has in terms of workforce productivity, and I just mentioned one example that it depends a bit on the country. 35 to 50% of the time people spend on searching information or material, basically. Alone that is a big potential. There's a lot of other things around workforce productivity which will improve, but it will still be one of the key challenges in 5 years from now. It won't be solved.
Okay. I have a couple of questions around like new technology trends, right? So, for example, 3D printing, right? What is its role, or what its role might be in the future of construction industry? And similarly, around the metaverse, there's a lot of conversation around metaverse, right? So, what is the role of metaverse, or what could be the role of metaverse in the construction industry?
So if you expect now here accurate predictions, I don't know how that will work. But maybe on 3D printing, if you stick to the 5 years, maybe in 5 years from now, we know where 3D printing could really work in construction. There is a lot of activities. There are startups that actually even try to print whole houses. I met a very interesting startup in the US. They moved to Arizona. They want to build or print, basically. It's a bit more than, it's not only printing, that they automate the full construction of single family homes, or want to automate that. There's ideas to then simply print certain materials that are needed. But I think it's, at the moment, there's no breakthrough on 3D printing in construction. And maybe in 5 years, we'll know where 3D printing will really take off, and in which area it has been rather a nice idea that I could imagine. No? So the other one was metaverse, what you were asking about. No?
Yes.
But honestly, that is pure speculation, quite honestly. I have no idea. Yeah? Maybe we don't build buildings anymore. We just build a metaverse.
So one
I don't know. But honestly, that we need to see. I think if we take it more from a virtual reality perspective, that there is applications that I can see. Yeah, this whole metaverse thing, I think that is a bit too speculative for me to really comment on that, quite honestly.
That's and the metaverse is so new. Its application across industries is still being explored. We don't know how well it'll work. There's cultural issues, all kinds of things behind it that it's difficult to predict. But I did hear an interesting conversation with a construction general contractor in Japan, where they want us to explore, and we're actually building a proof of concept on the metaverse with them. And the specific use case they talked about is getting approvals from the buyers, right? The people who want that construction. So if you want, like traditionally, the thing has been that you would show them either blueprints and mock-ups and stuff like that. But to try and create a more immersive experience, just to get approvals and sign-offs on certain design issues. So that's something they want to explore. Again, they don't know if that's going to work or not. They just want us to build a POC and experiment with some of their customers to see if that's something that could work.
Is it a metaverse use case, or is it more virtual reality use case where you simply have a proper illustration and 3D model where you can walk through, fly through, and simply get a feeling for it? Because I understand the metaverse is a bit more also commercially. You own a building in the metaverse and these kind of things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think the word where metaverse means to different people is also different, right? And a lot of metaverse use cases sort of overlap or confused with virtual reality use cases. But I think the way this construction company is thinking about it, and it's all very exploratory thinking, is that they will have a design house, which is their virtual entity, right, where they can invite customers in and show them and walk them through things that they want approval for. Again, as I said, very, very early exploratory, but at least this company is trying to experiment, right? And whether the experiment succeed or fail is yet to be seen, right? One last question from my side is, what is the role of software companies like GlobalLogic, for example, in helping companies like Hilti? And we've obviously had a very interesting experience over the last few years. Hilti has been a very, very innovative company. But do you see this expanding, right? Are you seeing more and more sort of players in the construction industry, or at least providers in the construction industry, reaching out to companies, technology companies, etc., for help? Or are they trying to do it more internally? Like, what is the thinking around that?
Yeah, maybe I share a bit the Hilti experience and and where we came from and how our journey was. We are obviously a classical hardware company, and we, I think, also historically have been already very strong on the service side for the customers and having innovative service models. And then we decided that we actually also want to complement that with really unique software offerings. But we obviously didn't really have the software know-how in-house. And there, GlobalLogic was of tremendous help for us to build it up. And we basically had together a project for our on-track development. On-track is an equipment and materials management software that we sell. And we built that together with GlobalLogic. GlobalLogic's role was really to bring in the experienced people, to bring in the development teams and so on. And we actually brought more the customer knowledge. And over time, actually, the team, to a large extent, transitioned then to a Hilti team and is now part of our Hilti technology solutions team in India. And it was really a startup help that we got from GlobalLogic, and to really help us to ramp up our own software development capabilities with that actually much faster. Yeah. Now we actually have more than, I think, 75% of the people actually now in-house Hilti people. Some are of the old GlobalLogic team, some are new hires that we've hired. And now GlobalLogic is more still supporting with certain team members there, but is now more selectively supporting. Yeah? It could be in the future that we have another big project where we really want to ramp up fast, and that we do then again with GlobalLogic. But for us, really the help was to really get out of we only know hardware and really help us to build up the software competence through their network, with their people, with their services. And I could see that this is also a big need for other companies. And I think it depends a bit on the company's strategy, whether it's like us, that we basically, GlobalLogic helped us to build up and then transition the team also to us, or whether others might also have more the vision to say, look, we stick on the demand generation and GlobalLogic forever takes the technology part. I think that is also an existing model that also works well. I think for us at Hilti, how we operate and how we want to do things, that is one that wouldn't have worked for us. But I think that's also a model that could work for a lot of other companies. Huh?
So that actually brings up a whole very interesting question and probably a discussion in the future. But I wanted to ask you one quick last question. You basically built sort of a software organization or a technology organization within the traditional Hilti tool construction company, right? How was that experience culturally, right? Because it's we've done a lot of digital transformation for other companies. It's a hard journey, right? So what are some of the key sort of takeaways or interesting things that came along that journey?
Yeah, I think the first learning is that you asked the question in past tense. Yeah, for me it is still present tense. I would say we are still building. Yeah, and I think that's also a bit the nature in software, that you always keep on building the product. You're never really done, and you always keep on also building your organization. You're changing certain things. You're bringing in new people and so on. So I think that's the first learning, that out of a classical hardware world where you build something, you're done, and then you start selling, that's very different. Yeah, it's an ongoing thing. It's a living thing that is software organization, and it keeps on evolving, and which I find personally super exciting. Yeah? That's maybe one thing to keep in mind. The other, I think in Hilti we have a very lucky situation that we have a privately held owner who has a very long-term perspective. So topics around, okay, we build software and are you profitable next week, and all these kind of things is for us. Look, it's obviously there. We also want to make profit, but we really take a long-term perspective, and we have luckily an owner who really supports that we make a long-term investment, which I think is also needed. And a lot of other companies, I would expect, underestimate the time that is needed to really get something up and running like that. Yeah? Certainly, maybe internally, I think there's a lot of similarities still, but also a lot of challenges around HR, around recruiting that needs special care, around processes, around way of working, really establishing this agile mindset around trying, failing, redoing, which are a bit different than classical hardware companies, and that needs, I think, management attention, but also needs really awareness of everybody, that this runs a bit different than the classical hardware world. But overall, I actually didn't find it that hard. I actually find it very energizing to build something up like that, and I also think that my team feels the same way. At least I hope so. Yeah.
No, that's great to hear, Michael. So we'll pick that up in a different discussion at some point. That it deserves a separate discussion on its own. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We're at the end of our time. We're actually a couple of minutes over, but thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We should end this now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.